little prop bag. That's the reason why there's a bag here. Thank you so much, Peter, and Asian Development Bank. And you're right, it's 5th ASEF, and so it's always interesting. I had to take a 1-year hiatus last year because there was a conflict between the Ashton Awards and ASEF last year, but I'm glad that that was cleared, so I didn't have to run from London to Manila. So, given the conversation that we just had, it's quite interesting that my presentation might address a bunch of these things. And so, I definitely think that there's a lot more combination thinking that needs to happen. And I do appreciate the comment about household thinking. So my perspective as a social entrepreneur is going to be about really kind of demystifying some of the myths that we constantly use to determine why we are not scaling, right? So what are some of the typical challenges that social businesses say or their reasoning for why they're not scaling? And then kind of twist it maybe into a different perspective and try to understand where we can go to truly scale and innovate in our perspective. So I was told this, there we go. So this is typical for everyone, right? I mean, social enterprises typically say, there's not enough money, I don't know how to access finance to really build my business, where do I go, how do I do it? And you end up going to a lot of investor forums and pitching and hoping that someone's gonna give you money, and it's usually between seed, growth, and scale, right? And that's the kind of capital we think about. The other major challenge that enterprises continuously talk about is that we just can't get the right experts or the right people in all the different layers that it takes to really build a good social enterprise that works in rural spaces. Now, I'm giving this in the context of India, but any other social enterprise in the room that's from Asia would obviously appreciate this. But because let's be honest, right, our sector is still quite nascent. Serving rural households, serving the poor, you can't find someone who's an expert in marketing solar or an expert in marketing sales and distribution. And given that we're working in such remote areas, you want local people to be working with you. So the comment about skills, is a big challenge. We also say that we don't really understand the products. So, as we're looking at innovation, I'm learning about solar thermal for the first time. I only really know about PV, but then there's biotech and hydro, and there's mini grids and off-grid, and then there's appliances. And to be honest with you, it's really nutty as you're starting to think about the right product market fit. And then we recognize that in the areas that we operate in, technology is very challenging. And let's be honest, when I sit in front of a tech application guy and I try to talk about my needs, it's like we're speaking two different languages, right? And we really we can't possibly be experts in everything that we're doing. And so really not understanding what technology to bring in, when to bring it in, how to bring it in, who's gonna actually operate it, and are my field staff really going to be skilled enough to operate it, yes or no, is always these fundamental daunting questions. And then market. Who's supposed to take the responsibility of helping people understand what clean energy means? And is it going to be the distribution company? Is it going to be the product manufacturer? Is it going to be the financier? Is it maybe going to be the government? Do they believe in everything that we also believe in? And so ultimately, it's a huge gap, and this is what we say is our biggest problem. And last but not least, I coined distribution, but ultimately it's access, right? How do you get difficult products to hard-to-reach places cost effectively and still create a commercial market? And I think this is ultimately, really been the larger daunting challenge that everyone is facing. And it's as complicated as no roads to as simple as the product costs too much and there's a different VAT or a tax that I don't really understand because the government changes its policy every couple of months or so. So, I think that if we look at these combinations, classic, we all talk about it, and I've been talking about it for the last 5 years at ASEF, right? But what if we looked at it with a different perspective? And I think this is kind of where Frontier Markets took things and turned it upside down maybe a year and a half ago. Ultimately, all of us care about household impact. We talk about millions of households that don't have access to clean energy solutions. We talked about why they struggle. We talk about the impact that happens to them, the loss that they create, the safety issues, et cetera. But every time I'm in a forum like this, we always hear about megawatt solutions, gigawatt solutions. And I gotta tell you, I'm pretty positive those gigawatts aren't being designed by the customers that are supposed to be benefiting this the most, right? So how are we actually drawing better market mapping insights to really understand household needs. Now, this isn't baseline mapping, right? This isn't census data that tells you that kerosene consumption is X% and Y% of people are below this kind of income. It's taking it to the next level. It's understanding that if you have kerosene consumption, what are you using it for? What is the opportunity cost of you not having it? What kind of income that you're generating is the level that the skills that you have that link to it. If you were to have a certain kind of product, how would you use it? Why would you use it this way? And what are your pain points? Really market mapping, kind of the same way Apple's obsessed with us as customers, right? And how they actually take insights to a whole other level to really try to get us to become a customer. And then the second is, we've talked about women a lot, and of course, Energia being here has been leading that dialogue. Women as entrepreneurs. We finally started talking about women being consumers. We finally started understanding that 70% of women, at least in where we work, are the users. But we're not trying to understand how do we get them involved in a much deeper way. And we're not talking about creating women as village-level entrepreneurs. We're not saying let's kind of pull them into the unorganized labor model. We're trying to really understand what are some of the assets or some of the qualities that women might or might not attain that allows them to be the right kind of change maker and business driver, and really try to understand this differently. And then when we're looking at people, let's talk about partnerships. So let's be clear, it's not going to be easy to get an expert in everything that you're trying to do from market building into your own organization. So how do we start understanding what other people are doing and what they're good at, and how do we align our interests to create larger growth? And then technology. So I think in India specifically, I think technology has kind of been very disruptive. And ultimately, I think it's been disruptive because we have been faced with daunting disruption, right? Demonetization really made it difficult to accept cash. Telecom industries has made it very opportunistic to look at 4G connectivity and look at cell phone connectivity. So how do we start kind of thinking through a different kind of way of approaching technology? And then product innovation becomes interesting, and you can imagine how all of this is, of course, linked. But product innovation then comes in from co-creation, where we're actually asking the household to come into the room and help us think through what kind of design solution makes the most sense for them. So if it's a mini-grid, if it's an off-grid solution, if it's electricity that's coming into that household, how do we get them to help us understand what to do and what next, and get them involved into that system more effectively? And then, of course, the topic on blended finance, and I do appreciate that comment. We have to start thinking about finance kind of differently, right? There's all these different kinds of financial solutions there. There are all these tools that are there. How do they apply in a much more systematic way? And let's be clear, it needs to be customized, because one size cannot possibly fit all these different solutions out there. So how do we start understanding how to co-create with the financiers to come up with a better market-based solution? So I'm going to give a couple of examples from the field on a couple of these categories. So this is an example of, how do we go back? There we go. This is one example of how customer insights can drive innovation for larger systems. So we work with a lot of rural farmers in India. In fact, our 200,000 household customer base are all agri households. So it's either primary or secondary is agri. And randomly, there were a couple of farmers that started buying 300 to 1 kilowatt systems, and we had no idea why. And when we went back to understand what they were using it for, they gave us all these new insights on poultry farming industries and the effects of not having access to regular, reliable electricity. So I'm going to give you a couple of quick facts. So the average farm, the bird farm, which is the most growing industry in India right now, is about 6,000 to 7,000 chickens that are being taken care of in one season. The area size is between 6,000 to 13,600 feet, and the average income per batch is somewhere between $900 to about $3,000 that the poultry farmer can make. And this is usually for a production period between 30 to 35 days. They end up potentially losing all of this if they don't have access to reliable and regular lighting. and if they don't have access to some sort of ventilation. Because it turns out chickens get scared and they start overcrowding with each other when it's dark, and that heat actually creates overheating, and these chickens die. So ultimately, when we started comparing electricity access to inaccess, the price per unit for electricity in the farming industry for poultry is almost 8.8 rupees per unit, whereas solar was coming out to about 4.34 for 1 kilowatt system. The availability of electricity at any given hour, if it's great in India, is 6 to 7 hours. They require 8 to 10 hours of lighting. There's no servicing when you have electricity connectivity, whereas there's definite servicing if you bring in a solution with a product company that's a social enterprise. There's no consistency of electricity because you don't own that system. And when we started working out on this data and started getting insights from these farmers, we ended up selling 30,000 300 watt to 1 kilowatt systems in one go. Now people started asking me, oh, Ajaita, it's probably because they're rich. And I said, no, it's because they understand the value proposition in a very different way. You're teaching them how to balance their financial opportunity costs in a different way. And you're trying to link this to productivity. And then, the job of a social enterprise is to package it and sell it to like 10,000 more people. And use those same insights from the customer to become your evangelist to take this to the next step. I wish I knew where I should point this. Okay. There we go. So I kind of mentioned this quickly about the women as entrepreneurs. So these are some quotes that actually we got from people, customers of these women entrepreneurs. They talked about them being innovative. They talked about them being empathetic. They talked about them being trustworthy. They talked about them being, a change maker. And I think that these were really daunting elements that we tried to understand whether it was different from other entrepreneurs. Women do not necessarily just need to be there for selling product. We recognize that they're great communicators. We recognize that they're phenomenal data collectors. I think throughout this forum, we've talked about how we need to track impact, but we also need to collect a lot more data to help some of our government officials in the room understand why this is an economic benefit to bring in clean energy. Guess what? Women are damn good at collecting that data because they can be very pushy and get the information quickly. So how do we integrate them into that model and incentivize them for regular income, but also link them to after-sales service? So our 2,000 women today are earning more income than what the National Rural Livelihoods Program started in India over 25 years ago. And time and time again, we kept pushing the same model, which was it's not about just commission. It's about the work that she's doing that makes her get fixed income, security, consistency, and long-term growth. And of course, adding skills development. So there's a lot of different pieces. So my screen says something different. Okay. We've already talked about a lot of these pieces that it takes to really kind of scale energy access or energy innovation in a different way. Ultimately, it's a lot of pieces of the pie that are all focused on the same idea of household level impact. If we can start coming together and recognizing household level impact is a common thread of interest, we can start looking at partnerships quite differently. And I think that's really what's been the success for Frontier Markets. We started partnering with organizations that we know can do certain things better than us, or that they can do certain things quicker than us. And the key was to present a common value proposition to take that to scale. Whether that's corporate partners, government partners, nonprofit partners, technology providers, manufacturers, financiers. It's really been about co-creation with the household coming at the center to really help us think through how to innovate, save cost, do things faster, and do things arguably better. So on the technology piece, this has been an interesting, Peter, I should get like 3 more minutes because of the glitches. Okay, there we go. So on the technology piece, we mentioned where innovation can come in. So demonetization created a lot of complications. People don't have cards, they didn't feel comfortable using their thumbprint. Some people didn't have cell phones, other people didn't know what a wallet was. But ultimately, the government decided that cash is not going to be available in rural economies. So what do you do quickly? And we actually ended up innovating with one of our partners to create something which became an all-in-one solution. We said, how do we use a tablet that actually covers all the different nuances for fintech that allows us to then address the common challenge that's on the ground? Because again, one size cannot fit all. And then how do we train these women or train our entrepreneurs or even train our sales staff to really understand how to optimally use this? When we introduced this originally, it was for a fintech solution. It's now become our data collection tool. It's become our monitoring tool. We've actually now been placing streetlights that can monitor the functionality remotely. And all of this comes into a really beautiful database that essentially you can play with to determine the kind of message you want to create. So the kind of messages that we're understanding are things like, what is the next big product that rural households want? What is that volume that can get created based on common trends? What does our government need to understand is the impact of having a woman become an energy entrepreneur versus sitting at home? What are some of the common trends of product flaws that happen when the manufacturer overstates the use of a certain system? Because now it's all being captured much more effectively, but it's also being delivered through the people that are on the ground in a much more empowering way. Okay. The last slide was on product innovation, so I'll just give you a quick example. Some of you have seen this throughout the last 2 years, but it's finally been launched. So it looks like a torch, right? So what's the big deal about the torch? The difference is that it actually has a long-range spotlight. And the reason that it was created this way was because 35,000 farmers told us that they need a spotlight to be able to actually scare their animals away from their crops. And that actually was a productive sense for them, and also it was an opportunity cost for loss making of their crop yield. So we designed this with them. They said they want 8 hours of backup, they want a long-term battery, they want it to be waterproof, they want it to work on solar, they want it to be hybrid, they want it to be waterproof, and it should cost under $20. And so, we had to take a step back and think about this. And so we started working with local manufacturers to understand the actual costs and what volume would it take for this product to be under $20. And when we worked that way, because we recognized that there were over 600 million farmers in India, it didn't seem like such a big risk to take if a lot of people love the product. And when we launched this, it not only created a pull market in India during demonetization. We were one of the few companies that actually doubled in our income because this was a product that everybody needed during farming season, that we also were able to pass this to our colleagues in other countries that said, yeah, my farmers need exactly the same thing. So do my fishermen. So do our women that actually look to want to protect themselves when they're going to catch wood on fire. So suddenly, what we thought was a small volume product, and we were hesitant to invest in the price point because we weren't really confident about whether or not it was going to take off. When we listened to our customer, we were able to co-design not just the technology, but the business model around it. And I think that's kind of the way that we've been looking at wanting to drive customer insights in a different direction to try to see how to scale things further. So I know I'm over my time, but all we'd like to say is that these insights, I think, are not necessarily super innovative. I think sometimes I think that they're common, but ultimately, as we start sharing it with each other and start thinking about co-creation more effectively, I think we can achieve really interesting scale. And we've been looking and working with some of our partners outside of India as well to really start thinking about how to test this out more effectively. And so if I, as an individual, we have a target of 1 million households in the next 2 years, we can imagine together we can probably cross that 10 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajaita. You definitely get a credit because you did not get proper instructions. I will give Laure proper instructions. So thank you very much for that inspiring talk. That was wonderful. Next, we have our impact investor, and her name is Laure Vinçotte, and she's managing director of ENGIE Rassembleurs d'Énergie, which is a corporate impact investment fund dedicated to energy access for poor populations. She has more than 30 years' experience in energy companies specializing in sustainable development. She is currently managing director of the Impact Investment Fund. This fund was set up by ENGIE, which was formerly called GDF Suez, by the ENGIE Group in 2011 in order to support entrepreneurs promoting energy access for excluded people in emerging and developing countries. So far, the fund has invested in 19 companies all over the world. Prior to this, Laure was senior CSR executive in the Strategy and Sustainable Design division of ENGIE Group, and it's a perfect follow-on. So Laure, please, you're welcome to the stage. And I will give you instructions. No slides. Okay, there it is.
So, hello everybody. I don't have any bag, but I have my glasses because I have a dilemma. If I put my glasses on, I can't see you very well. But if I don't put my glasses, I'm not sure I can read very well my speech. But let's choose to see you very well, and let's try without glasses. So thank you very much for inviting me today for this closing session. It's really an honor. It was such a great experience to attend all the sessions and meet companies, organizations working together on energy transition. Thank you very much to ADB, USIB, and Carolina Energy Agency for the organization of this tremendous event. So for this closing session, I would like to speak about energy access. I would like to share with you my experience of 5 years of corporate impact investor, especially what I have seen and what is my conviction on electricity access through smart, individual, decentralized solutions. First of all, maybe a few words about ENGIE and why we have set up this impact investment fund dedicated to energy access all over the world. Behind me, you can see pictures of a company we have invested in called Simpa Network. You may have met Piyush, CEO of the company. He's in the room. And it's in order to illustrate also my speech about these kind of solutions about solar home systems company. So to go back to ENGIE, ENGIE is a global energy player company with about 150,000 employees working in 70 countries. We develop our businesses around a model based on responsible growth to take on the major challenges of energy transition to a low-carbon economy. 5 years ago, maybe a bit more now, so it was in 2011, we had the willing to support entrepreneurs developing innovative solutions for the base of the pyramid. We have identified that they needed finances, indeed, but also technical assistance to scale up. We have employees able to bring expertise, working in 70 countries to bring technical assistance. We decided to set up this fund, and we decided to call it Rassembleurs d'énergie. So yes, it's in French. I'm sorry, we don't have any translation in English. But for just once, we can try to speak a little French. But the idea, it means that we want to gather all the energies coming from our group, but also all the energies coming from different partners in order to invent, in order to co-create new kind of solutions, because we need new kind of solutions. So, as Rassembleurs d'énergie, we are investing in profitable local companies providing B2C, sustainable and relevant energy access solutions to poor and remote populations. We have started with 15 million euros to start. The capital is coming from the group, and a bit from the employees also. And last year, the group has decided to reinforce the amount of the fund up to 50 million euros. We have invested now in 20 companies. The last one is in Guatemala. It's about solar home system. through 30 investment rounds, and we are active on 4 continents. We cover 3 types of businesses: energy efficiency, clean cooking solutions, and solar power through solar home systems or microgrids. I will focus on that point. We have 5 criteria of investment: social impact, clean energy, economic viability, ability to mix energies between the entrepreneur and our group, and, of course, return on investment. We invest on average 800,000 euros in equity or quasi-equity, up to 5 million euro minority shares, and we want to be part of the governance of the company in order to be able to make these synergies between the entrepreneurs and between the group. The maturity of the companies, it varies from very early stage, startup almost, and at proof of concept stage, to Series C of about 30 million US round. And all the companies of the portfolio have provided close to 1.5 million people with clean, sustainable energy. So, more than 70% of our portfolio is invested in off-grid individual solar solution, solar home system companies. So why? I think it was not really something, we have planned at the beginning. It was about the deal flow, about the company we have decided to invest, fitting with these 5 criteria we want to, in order to select the entrepreneurs. So these companies sell solar home system to off-grid households on credit using locking mechanisms remotely controlled via mobile phone networks, mobile money payments, and cloud-based management systems. Therefore, a 5-year track record as director of solar home system company at different maturity level has enabled Rassembleurs d'Énergie to gain a certain experience and know-how on this industry and helped us build our conviction. Let me share with you what I have observed through our investment in these individual off-grid solutions. First point, solar home system, an obvious solution to address the issue of power needs. The industry has proven its ability to reach a significant impact in a very limited period. The advantage of these solutions is that they can often be deployed much faster than grid extension or mini-grids, providing crucial development impact sooner rather than later. As regards our portfolio, the companies we have invested in have provided clean, sustainable, and affordable energy to 1.5 million people. What we like about most entrepreneurs we've supported is that there is direct correlation between the equity injected in the companies and the number of beneficiaries that they serve. Moreover, the increased capacity reached by the solar home system, combined with the technical improvements of the appliances, have now enabled solar home system to do far more than provide dim lights and phone charging and to enable productive use. For example, 2 or 3 additional hours of light in Uganda, yeah, you know the country Uganda, retail shop with a Phoenix solar home system can generate up to 20% additional revenue. A solar-powered refrigerator in Mexico, supplied by Ilu Mexico, another company we have invested in, to a grocery store in a rural community in Yucatan, may increase its revenue by up to 35%. You see behind, 25% of Simpa customers in India are small shopkeepers. They are able to open their shops more longer and are paying the cost of solar home system out of additional earnings. So, solar home system, I would like to highlight that through the appliances are delivering immediate benefits in the form of lighting, air cooling, connection to the world through mobile phone, through TV, and we can feel that directly on the field. Second point, Solar home system off-grid solution as a sustainable way of meeting the energy demand. Interestingly enough, Bbox, another company we have invested in, working in Africa, it's a key player of this industry, and it defines itself as a virtual solar grid. That is to say that its ambition is to serve its customer as a grid through decentralized solutions, and this is made possible by the use of smart digital devices enabling to understand, anticipate, and offer maintenance services to remote customers while enabling adapted power. Third point, solar home systems as an attractive product to sell other devices and services. Yes, the initial mission is to supply off-grids and often poor population with clean and affordable energy. But the technical breakthrough that we mobilize to reach this goal have far more to offer. Pay-as-you-go systems that enable the supplier to monitor the systems also offer them the possibility to sell other related devices or services using the solar home system as a collateral to the new sales. This may include clean cook stoves, but also insurances or educational loans. Fourth point, the last